Number 6.
I had a really great conversation yesterday with my client overseas right now, and it just reminded me that my times when I started doing some kind of strength training, it was about 7-8 years ago.
You mean when you first started?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was finishing my high school, and one of my friends, he introduced me to like strength stuff, and he invited me to go with him to Global Gym. And I remember doing almost for 4 years nothing different than just strict functional bodybuilding stuff.
Yep.
And I think that I've built a great kind of base, structural base, and great habits in terms of proper movement technique, like body awareness, and I find it very helpful for me, even for myself, but also in coaching others, that this step cannot be like
Skipped.
Yeah, skipped. And I see that when I work with people, let's say they don't have any experience with weights, they just do some kind of sport activity prior, let's call it running, karate, swimming, whatever, and they start training, and they don't have this base built already. It's really tough for me as a coach to instruct them how to do the movement properly if they are training alone, and if they don't have a, let's call it a good training partner or some other person watching them.
Provide feedback.
Yeah. So, and I can do only that I tell them focus on this part of the movement,
Yeah.
but it's their responsibility to learn how to do it correctly, or start working with some assistant coach or somebody
Yeah.
who just help them. What do you think?
If they haven't gone through that proper build up of training, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I always say, well, I say I'm biased to that, right? Because that's the way I came up, right? I came up doing like focused on like bodybuilding, movement, and strength, and time under tension type training. So I learned how to do every movement.
Yeah.
And each movement was focused on. And then you learn how to do all these movements, and you learn to improve each limb on its own. You're kind of looking to develop a muscle group, a muscular system, as opposed to developing a movement.
Yeah.
And I think it really did provide a lot of good starting points for me, and especially because I was really weak, right? It was a good way to do it, and I think it's very good for young people too, because then the main thing of doing it like that and having a lot of different, basically it's like the assistance work that we would do, and we would give people that are at a higher level in CrossFit. The assistance work is kind of like the only work the beginner does, right? They don't do snatches, clean jerks, they don't do snatch balances, they're not doing like muscle ups. That's not the way it goes. Like the assistance work for the CrossFitter is ring rows. The primary movement for the beginner is ring rows.
Yeah.
And I think that's skipped. I think if a beginner comes in, I think the worst thing you can do is just throw them into a class. I think it's the worst thing you can do. I think they need to learn how to do a whole bunch of different movements, which is what we're talking about. Which is what having it's primarily honestly a strength-based thing. It's a strength bodybuilding, muscular growth, hypertrophy focused program. You get those kids to develop work capacity in those types of training sessions, but the focus is always on doing the movement perfectly and achieving muscle mass and strength. And work capacity comes along with it.
Yeah.
Because if you do sessions that are like A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, and it's upper lower combo, like strict pull-ups paired with like lunges, and then dips paired with like Romanian deadlifts, and then step-ups paired with dumbbell rows, like That's really hard.
Yeah.
And for a beginner, he's getting everything out of it.
Yeah.
He's going to get increases in muscular strength and muscle mass and work capacity, because it's going to be very challenging. For like some of those sets will be 30, 45 seconds of work.
Yeah.
And it's
maybe
quite challenging.
even longer.
And the recovery between each set is demanding. So by the end of the session, they're very fatigued.
Yeah.
So for a beginner that doesn't know how to do the movements that well and is not accustomed to weightlifting, I think it's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't care if the person's 30 and has never worked out before, or 14. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
And I find you get the best progression with the least amount of injuries from that. Because and there's no argument, if you get a beginner starting that's never done any weightlifting before, I think they'll get better long term that way than if you put them into like snatching, clean and jerking, back squatting, and and then throw in wall balls and double unders and stuff.
Yeah.
They're not learning enough.
Yeah.
There's not enough variation in the movement. You're not training each muscle group to develop requisite competencies, right? That's a big thing that's not talked about, is developing a base level of fitness or conditioning or strength or work capacity before going to the next level, right?
Yeah, basic principles we can apply is straight before some dynamic movements. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
It all runs the same, right? It's like saying people shouldn't be doing like plyometrics or touch and go plyometric stuff until they're of a certain strength.
Yeah.
And the same thing, people shouldn't be attempting muscle ups or toes to bar or chest to bar until they're of a certain strength.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing good that's going to come from that, right? You haven't given their tendons time to adapt. Their muscles and their joints don't have the proper education as to what's supposed to happen and how it's supposed to brace itself and protect itself. So it just sets up for bad movements down the road.
Yeah.
It's going to take a long, long time to fix.
Yeah. I see it as a great starting point for beginners,
and then you take the rowing and biking and running and just take it separated. Do that on other days.
Yeah.
So they do like really low muscular tension, basically cyclical work, just complete breathing and pacing, and learn that on other days. And they learn strength and muscular endurance and work capacity, stamina on that day. If you did that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, those types of workouts, A1, A2, B1, and then did like rowing on Tuesdays, running on Thursdays, biking on Saturdays, for like a kid that's 14, 15, 16, 17, male or female, you're going to create a very, very developed person in 2 or 3 years.
It's money.
It's money.
Great.
That's how we did it. That's how we did it with some of our younger players, right? And it works very, very well. But it takes patience.
Yeah.
And it takes progression. You have to know how to design the workouts correctly and know how to prioritize things correctly. And that takes a lot of practice and experience. And then faith that it's going to work, because people will get anxious unless you've seen it work before. You won't believe it's going to work.
Yeah. A lot of practice and believing in themselves.
Yeah.
Also in coaches as well. Maybe it's tough or tougher to do it remotely with people when they are alone, but in person, it's
easy.
money.
Easy money.
Thanks.
Yeah.